So calling the meeting to order at 7:31. And the first thing on our agenda is meeting minutes. So Gordon, do you want to talk about the minutes? They're up for approval. I know you're not on the board currently, but you are working to help us finish that out.
I couldn't hear you, Gordon, if you were speaking. Now you're mute.
Okay. He's already forgotten.
How soon?
Well, we really appreciate Gordon helping us close out these meetings. So I'm going to help us keep going. So we're looking to approve the minutes for March 9th, March 30th, and April 13th. The board has had revisions go back to Gordon, and Gordon sent out last night the current versions. Does anyone have any edits or concerns on any of these three sets of minutes?
So Brian, I just have one comment on the March 30th minutes that I just want to have on the record. There's nothing wrong with the minutes per se. I just wanted to comment that I think Dean Banfield had made a comment about the goal of 100% non-emitting electricity in our strategy. He suggested that we had moved the goalpost on achieving the 100% goal from 2020 to 2021. And I just want to go on record that when I joined the board, I saw that strategy for the first time, and it has always been a 2021 goal. So I just want to make sure that the record is clear that in our strategy document, that goal has always been 2021. And Laura, you can correct me because I don't think I saw version 1, but the one I saw in November of 2021, I mean, November 2017, the goal was always 2021 and has been since then.
Right.
Okay. So that's my only comment, but the minutes as written were fine.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Wendy, for correcting the record, because that was an incorrect statement that was lodged.
Yep.
I just confirming here, we're not talking about April 27th.
No, we're talking about March 30th.
That was March, yeah, March 30th minutes.
Up to April 13th or something.
The minutes that we are looking to approve, which there's no motion yet, is March 9th, March 30th, and April 13th.
Okay, thank you. Just want to confirm that.
Yeah.
So we didn't approve March 9th last time. I thought we had, but I could be wrong.
I saw them around for discussion by Gordon.
Okay, well, I will I don't know if we want to do these individually, but I'll make a motion that the minutes for March 9th be approved as distributed.
Second.
Second. Oh.
We have a second. Wendy?
Yes.
Alice?
Approve.
Oh,
You're going to do a roll call on them?
Yeah, sorry, I'm doing a roll call. So Alice?
Yes.
Okay, and Pam, do you agree that
Yes,
we're ready?
yes.
Great,
Yeah.
and I also agree. So we can approve the minutes for March 9th. I'm sorry, yeah, March 9th. And now do I have a motion for March 30th? And Wendy, is there any way that you'd like your concern recorded?
I think the minutes of this meeting will clarify that because I don't think we can alter the minutes formally, but I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the March 30th meeting as drafted and distributed.
Second.
Second. And roll call, Wendy,
Aye.
Alice,
Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
and myself, I agree as well. And do we have a motion for the April 13th minutes?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from 4/13 as distributed to the board.
Second.
And Wendy, roll call,
Aye.
Alice,
Yes.
Pam,
Yep.
and myself as well. So great, we've approved 3 sets of minutes, and we will see where we go from here. Gordon, are you able to speak? Nope. Okay, he's muted. All right, so I will follow up with Pam and Gordon on closing out the minutes for the other meeting in April, I believe, and any other recent minutes. and finish out the transition so we can get all caught up.
I want to thank Gordon for what his doing this.
Yeah, I very much appreciated going above and beyond, and thank you, Gordon. I want to mention there is the schedule of the next meetings are July 13th and August 10th as written. There may be a meeting added, but we'll wait until we discuss the PCA to see if it's needed. And now the chair's update. We're going to move on to the chair's update. I wanted to get the board's feedback on the new style of the agenda. I've added for each agenda topic that we're going to have discussion on a background and a purpose to help kind of guide our discussions. What is the board's feeling on this change to the agenda?
I think it's fine.
Okay.
It's helpful.
All right. Seeing no other comments, we'll keep moving because I know we got a lot to talk about. So I'm kind of going quick. So I received a request from Amanda Cohen for the board to pick someone to be our representative on CSECT. And she gave me a list of current members, and the only person who has any real experience working with the light plant is Janet Miller. And so I'd like to propose that Janet Miller be the representative for this board on CSECT. It is not, it doesn't have any authority. It's just within the charge of CSECT. They ask that the board, the light board, designate someone to represent their views.
It's in our charter that it
No,
says-
it's
No.
in CSEC's charge.
Well, then we have no input into this. They can choose whoever they want to sit in our meetings and report back to their committee.
I believe the way it's worded is they want someone who has experience talking to us to be on the board. Amanda,
They're
do you-
not on the board, right? They're sitting,
Right.
they are liaison to listen in on the board and report back to CSEC. Is that what you're saying? They're not a board member.
No.
They are
And-
representing CSEC. They sit at the meetings and can offer comments like anyone else, right?
Are they a
That's-
CSEC board member? I'm not clear.
Yes, so
Okay.
they are a CSEC member. And why don't I have Amanda clarify as I see here, she's on the screen.
So CSEC's charge reads, the membership shall be as follows, and the first bullet point says one representative recommended by the Concord Municipal Light Board.
So recommended by, okay.
Oh, that's different. That means that the light board, when it's choosing people who will be members of the light board,
Right.
Bring somebody on that represents the interests of CSEC. That's different than a CSEC board member being a liaison to our board. So when we offer names or people who have come forward and volunteered to be on the light plant board, there's somebody that should be representing the interests of CSEC, not necessarily a CSEC member.
No, I think this is
you're wrong,
CSEC asking us to make a recommendation to their board as
Wait
a
a minute,
representative.
Wait a minute, read that again, because what I heard Amanda say is that the light board will
No.
recommend somebody to our board. who
No, to
represents the
ours.
interests of CSEC.
Let Amanda reread it.
Right.
So this is CSEC's charge, and it says the membership shall be as follows. And then it has several bullet points. And the first one is one representative recommended by the Concord Municipal Light Board.
Yep.
So we are the ones recommending a member of CSECT for representing our views within CSECT. It's not us
Right.
putting a board member on their committee. It is simply who do we feel best understands this board's views.
So Brian, is there, and maybe it's for Amanda, are there openings on CSEC that they're looking to fill, and therefore we're looking to add somebody, make a
We do.
recommendation to CSEC about a new member?
We do have an opening, which then sent us back to the charge, and we looked for old documentation
Yeah.
of historic appointments, and
Okay.
now we're retroactively seeing if there are any members that fit that description. But it would be an option, because there is an open membership on that board, so it wouldn't necessarily have to be an existing member.
Okay, that's what I was trying to understand. So you have an opening that we have an opportunity to make a recommendation for.
Yeah, or you could choose an existing member, because we don't have documentation of
Yeah.
how they have met their charge historically on the other bullet points. And so we are kind of matching people retroactively to their
Okay.
charge.
And Dave, do you mind if I get sharing ability, and I'll share the email? And in the email, it lists the members that Amanda suggests we
Yep.
pick from.
Go ahead, Brian.
So it's a little unusual. Okay.
Well, yeah, I'm trying
get it.
to ensure everybody's comfortable with where we're headed. So, so this is the email I received, and Janet Miller is someone who was on the EV working group. I believe she may actually still be. She has worked with the light plant on different issues. Jerry Frankel has as well, but I believe he is chair of CSEC. Is that correct, Amanda?
He is chair. He may be, I think he's nearing his 1 year, so
Okay.
maybe not for long.
So I was proposing that we select Janet Miller to fill this role.
I would, I don't know what the procedure is right now, but I think that's a good choice. And I think to the extent we need to vote on this or something, Brian, I would move it forward with the support of Janet.
Yeah, I think a straw poll will do. So Alice, what is your thoughts?
I'd be happy with any of those folks. So if people like Janet, great, I'll go with it.
And Brian, I'd be happy to have Janet there as well. My only request is I would like to get some updates from these committees as to what's going on. I know that Dave and his team provide updates, but if there's something that CSEC itself should be presenting to the board, then we should get those updates as needed.
Okay, I don't want to, I know updates can tend to fill up the agenda and take up a lot of time if we do them every month. So maybe, maybe Amanda could provide a quarterly update on CAB and CSEC.
Yeah, that'd be great, because I'd like to know about CAB as well, because I think that's the other question. Don't we have a representative on CAB as well?
Yes, I don't remember who that is, but we do.
Looks like it's Brian Krautz.
Yep, because he had once been a light board member.
Yep, he's a former light board member.
Yep.
Great. Okay, all right, let's, we're going to move on to the next agenda item, which is the director's update. Dave?
Yep, thanks. Thanks to the funding of a Concord resident, we're now offering a rebate for folks that replace their gas-powered lawnmowers with electric lawnmowers. Rebate's $100, and it went into effect on June 1st, so we're pretty excited about that. We need to do a little more in terms of marketing it, but we did this a number of years ago and was successful. I think we had the first go around 96, and our target is 100 on this one, and that's what the funding's for. So
great.
That's exciting for us, and it was very generous of the resident who funded it. CMLP's 2022 energy management expenditure forecast included funding to contract with a BODE to provide an intensive decarbonization assessment for Concord households. Unfortunately, a BODE let us know that they won't be able to offer this assessment this year. They're taking the time to do some additional piloting to determine the type of assessment that is most valuable and useful to people, and they want to find the right software partner to work with. So hopefully they'll be successful in that, and we can move forward in 23 with that. CMLP and E&E staff volunteers participated in 2 recent Cooler Concord events, the Your Sustainable Home Now Network workshop on the 25th of May, and the EV display and charging tips opened house was on June 4th. So those are two outreach things that we did. The other item in the energy management section, if you recall in the budget for 2022, we
Wow.
had budgeted $87,000 for solar rebates. And based on the rebates issued and the committed rebates, that expenditure is likely going to be around $140,000 for calendar year 2022. So it's a good problem to have, but that line item will be about $53,000 over budget if we hit the $140,000 target. In terms of operations, the Emerson Hospital switchgear, which has been on the agenda or on the topic for us for a little while now. As I reported previously, we did get all the parts. We were able to rebuild the switchgear with the switchgear manufacturer, and it's ready to be cut over. We had it scheduled to be cut over and put back to normal operation. And literally when we were getting ready to do the shutdown, they came out and asked us not to because they have an emergency surgery. So we obviously bumped the cut over, and staff's working with hospital right now. And there's a strong possibility that will happen this weekend. So we'll be happy when that's done and that's back to normal operation. In terms of the advanced metering system, the RFP review team completed review of the proposals, ranked them. We did reference checks, and we've narrowed it down to one vendor. We currently have council reviewing the agreement, and I reviewed it as well. And I suspect that we're going to have quite a few changes because the agreement currently is one-sided in the vendor's favor. And this is very common when we do these things. So there'll be a negotiation that happens, and we'll get a contract in place that's good for Concord. In terms of personnel, we interviewed a grade 1 line worker. We've been through the reference checks, and we're now in the process of onboarding the candidate. So hopefully everything comes back good on the background checks and all that, and then we'll set up a start date. So we're excited about that. And we're in the process working with human resources on launching a recruitment for the customer service representative position. So more to come on that, but that's my update.
Dave, so it's wonderful to hear the switchgear on the hospital, because I know we had an outage there related to that switchgear, and a long-term solution is needed because that's a critical facility. On staffing, it's great to hear that we've got a candidate. How are we in big picture on staffing? Are you fully staffed, or how many open positions?
So assuming that recruitment successful, and I have no reason to think it won't be, that will leave us with 2 open positions in the line division. So we're getting in better shape there. Customer service rep, we have 2 positions we want to fill there. And then we do have a broadband technician position open. And I think
Jason.
telecom director, but Jason will talk about that.
Yeah.
Update.
Okay.
And I think that's about it.
Pam, Alice, and Wendy, do you have any questions? Wendy?
I do, Dave. So how's the heat pump rebate process going? Because I know there's been a ton of interest. Are we over budget on those expectations as well?
We're not yet, but I
Okay.
expect to be reporting on that we will be.
Okay.
There's been a lot of
Curious.
interest.
Yeah.
And, which is a good thing, but I think when we think about these items, and when we're over budget on them, they'll hit the bottom line.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's important. One of the things that we'll need to talk about at some point at a future meeting is how we handle the energy management budget. A lot of times you put these items into tariffs, and that way, if you don't have additional funding, you can close the tariff and you're not discriminating. Right now, we just have the rebates and they're open, so we can't just shut them off. So it's a little bit of a risk, and we've been doing it that way for a while, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be looking at change. And, you know, the board could then vote to continue with the rebate above the budget amount if they wanted to. So we need to have that discussion at some point. It definitely before the budget cycle.
Budget, okay.
I'll
Great.
put that on the agenda topics rolling list.
Right.
Alice?
So I had a quick question about the Emerson Hospital. If I remember that outage happened in the winter. Is it common to take 5 or 6 months to make final repairs to something?
Great question. No, it's not normally something that takes this long. The reason why it took so long is we could not get the parts. It was a lead time issue, as there is with so many other things. So there were one particular item that took quite an extensive amount of time to get, and we researched and to try and see if we could get those parts from a neighboring utility and then replace theirs, which is common practice. Being a unique item, we weren't able to get it. We had to wait for the manufacturers to deliver them. Once we got them, we certainly scheduled it immediately and made the repairs. And now it's really on the hospital to let us cut it over. If by chance we had an outage there, we could do the cut over during that outage, but we're really trying to keep it in line with their schedule. And, you know, normally we do a shut off at, 2 or 3 in the morning where it'd have the least amount of impact on them. They would go on generation. We would do our work, do our tests, and then turn them back on.
And there was a temporary fix, obviously, rather quickly. So the hospital was able to operate within 45 minutes of the emergency, and this is the permanent fix so that we can avoid any of these issues in the future.
Yeah, and that switchgear was put in I think 2012, and it has automatic transfer. It's got 2 circuits to it. It's highly technical switchgear. So we're just looking forward to getting it back online.
Great. Pam, you
Thank you.
haven't asked any questions. Just want to make sure if you have any, you're able to. Did you have any questions for Dave about the update?
No, that's
Okay.
that's fine. I mean, my usual question on hiring, I just hope we're doing whatever we can to
Yep.
encourage recruitment of a diverse workforce, which I think is really important. But I was not going to even mention that because I do it all the time. So you gave
Okay.
me things, so here I am.
Seeing-
Thanks, Brian.
You're welcome. Seeing no other board questions, Jason, would you like to give the broadband update?
Absolutely. Thank you. I'll try to be brief because I know there's a busy agenda today. I provided a written update that should have been sent to the board members, and we are working on a place on the website for these to appear going forward. In terms of personnel, as we were just talking about, we did have our most recent telecom technician who started in March resign in May. Due to personal reasons, he had relocation issues with his family and decided not to settle down in this area. So it wasn't a problem with broadband or with him. It was just didn't work out for his family. We're looking at this as an opportunity, though, to examine that position. We always knew that we're kind of on the cusp of needing 4 people or 3 people in that role. We have 3 people there today. 2 of them have worked there about 2.25 years, and one of them's worked there for over 6 years. And they're all great, wonderful employees who are getting a lot done. We do also rely on a third party to help pull fiber, and we've started doing that recently, and I have a little bit more to say on that. But what we're trying to do is make sure there's not too much pressure on those 3 individuals in the role in terms of after-hours support or holiday support, and that we can respond to storms and outages quickly and effectively with the staff that we have. We do have a contract each year that we sign with a third party to do emergency splicing repairs if there is a storm or damage to any fiber. So we feel like we have the tools to keep building deployments and growing our numbers, but we want to make sure that we got staffing levels right. I know it's something that the task force talked about a lot, and now that we're gathering a lot more data and compiling more metrics to look at the financials of that, and we're just going to do some analysis and see what makes sense. I'll work with the new telecom director and Matt and Dave and just to determine what is the right number, because we're kind of sitting in that middle spot. And so I'll talk a little bit more about, where we are in terms of, are we at the peak of how many customers we have, or are we still growing? But all of those factors will be determined when we make a decision on that. And speaking of the telecom director, we have an excellent finalist, and we have extended an offer for employment. It's a really competitive job market right now, as I'm sure everyone knows. And so the candidate is taking some time to determine if this is the best fit. And hopefully we'll have some good news at the next meeting that we've got the role filled. It has, historically been a tough niche to fill because we need such a broad background in terms of business management, but also technical skills and people management and knowledge of fiber and broadband. So hopefully we're moving in the right direction there. I mentioned the third party who's assisting us pulling fiber. I wanted to let the board and the public know that any third party will not be interfacing directly with customers. They're really just helping us get the fiber from the nearest splice point to the pole or infrastructure nearest the home or business that we're going to be installing to. So they're essentially just staging that fiber there. And our employees will continue to interact with and deploy the ONTs and gear into customers' homes and work with them to make sure everything is going smoothly. We wanted to make sure that people who enter homes and work with customers are employees and they're experienced in what they're doing, and they know all the proper safety protocols and the high level of customer service that we hold ourselves to. So we've already done 15 polls with this third-party vendor. They were very technically difficult polls, meaning either long distances or difficult to reach areas. Almost all of them required police details. They were in busy areas or tight to reach spots where it required our vehicles or equipment to be sticking out into the road and blocking the road. So it was really good to get all those done in a short stretch of time. And our team has already gone back and spliced all that fiber and got it ready to go. So now we're making appointments with those customers to get those installed. And obviously we're continuing doing other installations from start to finish, but we're hopeful that this process will lead to us being able to deploy a lot more fiber to customers and get them signed up more quickly. We did some pretty big maintenance this month. We firmly believe that continually maintaining our equipment will result in fewer unexpected issues, and those always lead to downtime, and people are not happy. So starting at 1 a.m. on June 2nd, every single piece of equipment that's manufactured by Calix was updated in terms of firmware and software. So we have these devices in customer homes. That's what actually gives you the internet in your home. We also have that equipment that back in our substations, which switches that communication. And so that hadn't been done in a little while, and we took steps to not only update it, but also make sure that that gets updated automatically in an ongoing basis. So for example, now when a customer's ONT has an update, it will automatically stage and be ready for them. And then the next time they power cycle the device, it will automatically be installed so that we don't have to take them down and then find that we've got, thousands of devices that are out of date. These updates help with stability and security. Sometimes they also give new features and tools for us to analyze and troubleshoot issues that pop up before they ever become a problem to the customer. So it was a win for us there. There were some hiccups in terms of preparation, but no hiccups during the actual work. Our network engineer was on site at the substation all day preparing with our vendor who was remote. And then the work started at 1 a.m. and they wrapped up a little after 6 a.m. On the 2nd. And so I just want to extend thanks to that employee and everyone who helped participate. We had very few issues. Only a couple of customers called in the morning, and there were no speed or loss of service issues that we knew about related to those upgrades. So when you upgrade that much equipment, your concern is always that something's going to go awry, but it went really well. And I think that now that we've got these steps going forward, we're not going to have to worry about that like we did here. I've also included a couple additional metrics in the report. One of them is completely new installs. One of the questions is how many installations are we doing that are actually bringing new infrastructure to people's homes and businesses versus just a reconnect of somebody who had service previously and then has had it added. So now you can see how many customers have been added to the system in terms of actual fiber being spliced and brought to that premise. That wasn't a metric that we really were reporting on previously. And then the other one was people who have submitted interest forms. So this is really the first step when somebody wants to sign up for Concord Broadband. They visit our website, they fill out a form, and they request it. And I figured that that was really useful when we ask if we've reached the peak or market saturation. I think that that interest level can help you gauge that. So that is the complete total number of people who are requesting new service. But what I'm going to try to do is tease that apart a little bit to differentiate between those places that have had fiber before versus places that haven't, because that might be a better indicator of market saturation. And then the other thing we can do is tease apart the people who are, completely new installs versus those people who are just on, vacation holds or, temporary service stops and then starting up again. So once we get those numbers, I'll report on those as well. And then I've also included a table of all the metrics that we're aiming to release on a monthly or quarterly basis. And, once we get all these, I'll know if that's a sustainable goal, but nevertheless, we're going to try really hard to get a lot of data into the hands of the boards, the light board, the select board, and the public. And it also will allow us to make better business decisions on how we're managing the division. And finally, I'll be at the select board meeting on Monday, where the task force for the fiber broadband completion will appear to present their final report. Again, I thank them for all their work, and I look forward to seeing that be completed, and then taking it on and making sure that those action items get addressed and discussed in the public. And that's all I've got today.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I first off, I suggest everyone who's on this Zoom turn off and turn on again their devices, because I've seen internet speed boosts from doing that every so often. The metrics are wonderful to see in the report. It's good to see that 25 to 30 people a month are showing interest in adding broadband, and that we're actually getting some new installs done every month. Does anyone on the board have any questions for Jason?
Oh, I'm curious about, with all the new installs that you've been able to perform, what does that do to our backlog? How much are we closing in on that?
Yeah, so the current backlog that we know about is in the 60s now. It was kind of in the high 80s before, so it is definitely coming down. What the other things that we're trying to do is get a better idea and feel for that number, because sometimes we think it's, we think a customer wants service, but they've dropped off because, they submitted the form a couple months ago and now their living situations changed, they're moving, or, they might have gotten another service. So we're using tools now to try to stay in better touch with customers so that they're aware of where they are in the queue, and we have a more accurate number. But that's the number we have now. So it is coming down, which is good. And I think that, being able to respond more quickly is going to increase the number of customers we can add, because people will understand that we can reliably and quickly hook up their service.
So a person who's expressing interest in May might be able to have that installed in what time frame?
Well, it depends. Some people reach out and they say, we're a business, we're moving into this premise, and we'd like our service hooked up in 3 weeks. And we do our best to accommodate those really time-sensitive situations where there might be a move-in on a particular day, or somebody expresses interest for something right away. Other people tell us plainly that they're just looking to have somebody come out and talk to them about what the service would offer. So those aren't necessarily people who are 100% going to sign up. So we do our best to prioritize those immediate need cases and fit them in, and we always reserve a little bit of time for that. So people who really need service ASAP, they say, I can't continue Comcast more than the end of the month. Please, can you help us? We do our best to accommodate those, and we usually get them done and accommodate those customers. Some people who say, I'm happy with my service, but I just like to add this because I would like to do more have higher upload speeds or something. then they might wait several weeks longer than somebody who expresses an immediate need. But so it really kind of depends on the customer and what their needs are.
Thank you.
Jason, is that what you refer to as the take rate? Is that the percentage of people who actually fulfill their initial request?
Yeah, and the take rate is for those people who have fiber available to them, how many of them are taking it?
Okay.
All right. I don't see any other questions, so I'd like to keep moving. Dave, who would you like to lead the discussion of the PCA? Would you like Laura to?
Yeah, Laura will, and I'll chime in as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to do an update on the PCA, which is the power cost adjustment. As you may recall, last year we instituted a 90-point, that's slightly less than 1 penny per kilowatt hour upcharge on energy on all CMLP customer bills because we anticipated that energy prices would be higher than at the time we set the budget and the rates earlier in the year. Time has expired since then. Lots has happened. And we want to give you an update on where we are in terms of how much we've collected and whether or not that's going to be sufficient. Next slide. So all energy prices are high. This is a chart showing both gasoline and diesel prices on the lower two series on that chart, and they're red on the right axis. So you can see that gasoline has gone up from $2 up to almost $4 in this chart. This is a national average, not New England. So it's a little bit not reflective of what we see here locally, but you can see how the trend has been up since December, pretty much relentless hike. Similarly for natural gas, which is the aqua colored line, you can see we had a spike in the winter in January, February of 2022, which we sort of anticipated. But since then, and especially since April, look how natural gas prices have taken off. This is largely due to the war in Ukraine and Europe's desire to get off of Russian gas. They are trying to cut deals in the US for more liquefied natural gas. And that's driving up the price of our domestic resource. At the same time, next slide, please. Natural gas inventories are low. The blue line represents where we are this year. The gray is the range that we've been in over the last 5 years. And the gray line is the average for those 5 years. So you can see that coming out of the winter of 2022, we are below the 5-year average. And the trend is we're not building as much as we normally like to. I mean, the function of the market in the summer is to pump gas into inventory and build a cushion for the next winter. And if we can't do that, then winter prices will be very high and volatility will be high. Next slide. So that the gas prices are up about 280% from last year, $8.50 versus $3. And this is the electricity price for Massachusetts hub, which is our regional area. The red line is the on-peak price, and so I'm sorry, the blue line is the on-peak price and the red line is the off-peak price. These prices have increased about 125%. From $40 this time last year to $90 today. So you can see that since the beginning of the year, and especially since March and April, when the war's effects really came home to roost, it has impacted prices significantly. Next slide, please. So CMLP's practice is to forward contract for a percentage of its power needs at known fixed costs. That includes both long-term renewable resources at fixed prices and also shorter-term non-renewable resources, anywhere from a month at a time to several years at a time. Most recently, we haven't contracted for any multi-year non-renewable resources. We've only used it to fill in months of the year that we were particularly deficient. So that percentage which we do not purchase at a known fixed cost in advance is purchased in the day ahead market. And when day ahead market prices change, which is what the chart you just saw previously, CMLP's cost to purchase power fluctuates on the volumes in number 2, that percentage that we buy in the spot market. Next slide, please. So what percentage do we forward contract for, and what percentage is purchased in the spot market? The orange are those volumes we purchased in advance at a hedged price. And the maroon color is that which we expect to purchase in the spot market from on a go forward basis, say from June to December, and what we actually purchased in the spot market from January through April. And what you'll see is that January had a particularly high unhedged portion. We did not go into the month expecting to buy 39% in the spot market. But because of the weather and our power needs, we ended up needing to purchase that volume in the spot market, which was at a very high price. On an annual basis, the percentage that is unhedged is about 19%. And the board's direction in the past has to maintain about a 15 to 20% unhedged position in the market. So while our portfolio meets that expectation, there is variation among the months in terms of how much we end up having to buy. You can see in April, we actually net sold for the month. We had more power forward purchase than we needed. So this reliance upon the spot market, while it's only 20% of our needs, does impact the bottom line pretty significantly. Next slide, please. This is a chart of how much we have spent on power by month in the blue, and the gray is how much was collected in rates for power, including the 90-point PCA that was instituted. So even with placing that PCA on, you can see January and February we were very deficient, and you all knew that. I mean, when we went into the winter, we had a discussion of whether we should place like a 2.5-cent PCA for the winter or 90 points for the year. And for rate stability purposes and other considerations, the board elected to make it a 90 points for the year. So we knew we were going to undercollect in January, February, with the expectation that some of that would be made up for the rest of the year. However, based on current market price forecasts that are provided by E&E and were last updated last Friday, when we look forward, we don't expect to overcollect to pay back the January and February. We expect to be actually deficient every single month to the tune of $4.2 million, which is a huge number. If we were to try to collect that deficiency over the balance of this year, that would be July through December sales. And to do that, we would need to get that rate increase in place and on bills by July 1st. Then the 4.2 million over the expected volume would amount to about 5 cents a kilowatt hour, which is about $30 on a small customer and about $42 on the median customer per month increase in their bill. So it's a very significant deficiency. It's not out of the, it's not unheard of. Other IOUs did raise prices to a similar extent, $30 a month for their customer bills. So I don't think CMLP is alone, but it's a heavy burden for us to have to deal with.
So $4.2 million, we collect in revenue about $30 million in total.
Yep.
From billing. So this is about 15%.
It's a huge, huge number.
Yeah.
It's an even bigger number of the power supply portfolio, right? Which is normally about $18 to $20 million.
Right.
Yeah.
And the good thing here is that we are 80% hedged with fixed known pricing. So this is only the impact to the natural gas market and the day ahead market is very significant, but we're only experiencing about 20% of that hit.
That's correct.
But it doesn't change the total. We're about 4.2 million in deficit,
Yeah, but
which is significant to recoup.
Yeah, but if we weren't hedged, this would be so much worse. Is there another slide, Laura?
There's one more and it just says, thank you.
Oh,
Thank you. So Laura, is it fair to say if we have a very high degree day average for the remainder of the year, this could be even worse, right?
Yes, it could.
Right. Okay.
I can't lie. Prices are generally set at a 50% probability.
Yeah.
With, 50% it's going to go higher and 50% it's going to go lower.
Right.
We just don't know.
so Laura, well, first, Pam and Alice, do you have any questions? I want to make sure.
Is there any way, you just said we don't know, is there any way to have any kind of foresight onto what the worst case scenario might be over the course of the rest of the year, Laura? And I imagine the answer is no.
We could look at options pricing, which is the market's way of telling you what they think the likely forward scenarios are going to be. And if we looked at out of the money calls, we might be able to get some inkling of what the market's thinking. But honestly, the market doesn't know either. And wars and things like that have a way of.
Well, it's not an exercise worth undertaking.
I don't believe so.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Laura, so if we were to adjust the PCA for the remainder of the year, starting July 1, it's currently almost 1 penny. And what would the suggestion be as to change that PCA to, given the numbers that we have today? What do you think we need to collect to be whole at the end of the year?
Well, if you wanted to recoup our current estimate of what the deficit will be for this calendar year, and we could institute the rate change effective with the July bills, the total PCA would need to be 5.9 cents. You would have to raise it a nickel.
Wow.
And that for your average customer would be, what would you say, 30?
It's about $30 for a sort of low customer and $42 for the median customer
Per month.
per month. It's a big nut. But
That's-
as I said, other consumers are already experiencing, the effects of this on their bills.
So,
I mean IOUs and other
so
municipals.
the intent here today was to kind of provide you all with this information. And then we believe that we need to have a separate meeting with a rate hearing if you guys choose to make the adjustment in the PCA. So that's what we'd like to have happen, is to have a rate hearing and a discussion in detail on this. And that's why I think we need an additional meeting this month.
So I have
think we
a
should-
thought and a recommendation, which would be that before a rate hearing, when we announce that we're having a rate hearing, we should do it more broadly than putting it in an agenda and posting an agenda. That maybe we use news and notices to let people know what's happening on the energy market, and that we will need to adjust our rates to cover the cost of a fluctuating gas market or oil and gas market. So that I think we have an obligation to be more transparent and upfront about what's happening out there and why their bill is going to go up significantly for the rest of this year, maybe even longer. And to do that, we should go beyond just posting an agenda. That's my suggestion.
I agree with that. I also think focusing on plain English and reminding people that they're experiencing this in many other sectors. When they go to the gas pump, they're
Good point.
experiencing probably higher percentage increases. So I think Alice is onto something, and that's a very important thing. A plain English, heads up with contextual material to make people understand that this isn't just a light plant problem, as many know already. It's a energy sector problem.
Right, and it's important that we not create panic with a message saying your electric bill is going to go up $50 a month. So I think we need to make sure that is very in context, and it's important for this board as well to understand the mechanisms of a PCA versus a rate change. A PCA is to deal with spikes or immediate changes in the energy market. But when we get to the end of the year, we will need to adjust rates based on our forecast for the coming year. So the PCA will potentially go away at the end of the year, but it may result in a higher energy charge on bills, going from say 7 cents to something, multiple cents higher. So when we have, well, clearly we're going to have a meeting to address this. At the beginning of this meeting, we kind of checked calendars and suggested June 22nd as a time to have this rate hearing at 7:30 through 7:30 to 9 o'clock in the morning. So we'll prepare that agenda, and we will make sure that news and notices. Well, actually, I want to hear from Wendy and Pam. Do you have any concerns about more broadcasting this change?
No, I think it's, I fully support Alice's recommendation. I think it's really important. And I'll just remember that when we do make this presentation, we need to just remind citizens that we've already been proactive on this issue because we already have a PCA in place, but this is an unusual marketplace dynamic that necessitates a further adjustment to the existing PCA. So I'm all in support of it. We just need to be fully upfront about the whole issue, which I'm sure we will be.
And I think it's also important to talk about the hedging that we've done to ensure that
in general, yeah, it's part of our
Not
role
too
to do that.
specific and not too techy. English,
Yep.
plain English only.
Yep. Right.
And also not, I mean, it sounds like we're being a little defensive. I mean, I think the real, I think another message done deftly would be that we face an uncertain energy future. And we consume a lot of energy in this town. And we need to understand that the consumption is costly and it may go up. And we can say a lot of stuff about what we're doing and pat ourselves on the back. That's fine. And we should not create panic or anything else. But I mean, reality is important too, both in terms of the extent of our consumption and also the realities of what's going on globally. I also wonder, and I really don't have an answer to this at all, but I wonder, is this an opportunity to continue to encourage energy conservation? How much can you save by doing things a little differently? Just wonder if that's something that's way outside of the set of issues we face here. But, I think it's a moment when it's important to speak honestly, not be defensive. We did well in but we shouldn't dominate our messaging with how well we've done. And also, to the extent there's some energy conservation opportunities, educational opportunities about what's going on and will continue to in the future, and the extent to which this town is major consuming town would be useful. I think.
So what I Dave and Laura, let's draft up some kind of notice, 1 or 2 paragraphs, not very long, that is an announcement of the rate hearing that's coming, as well as some background that was captured in this presentation. And then I can share that draft with the board and individually get feedback from them. And if they have any major concerns, we can adjust and then get that out. How does everyone feel about that plan?
That's fine. Do you think there's any room for energy conservation, just a nod to that or not?
I think a call for people to go to the website for our energy conservation efforts may be appropriate, but I don't want to confuse the message with too much material. I think we've already got a lot to cover in 2 paragraphs to say we need to raise rates because of natural gas prices, and here's the reason, and here's the work done to minimize this effect, and here's when the rate hearing is happening. Please come see.
And take a look at take a look at opportunities for energy. I mean, that would be a parenthetical even.
Yep. I think a sentence to point people in the direction of energy conservation efforts that the light plant already does is a great idea.
I would make a slightly altered recommendation, is that the rate hearing should be about the rate hearing and why we're looking at having to raise rates. But as part of a campaign strategy, we continue the discussion over the next several months. As we said, we're moving into the summer months. here's where electricity use tends to go up. You can play your part in reducing energy use and energy costs, and have that energy conservation message be more widespread over a longer period of time. So I would extend that message. We have a rate hearing, we explain why we're having it, but 2 weeks later or a week later, we said summer's coming, here's what you can do to help keep the energy costs down and use less. So I like the idea of using that as an opportunity for messaging. And nothing like a $30 rate increase on your bill to help drive it.
Right.
Okay. Pamela, I'm going to hold on questions because I want to get us ahead of schedule on this agenda. I will take it during public comments. Thank you. Okay, so is the board ready to move on to the next topic? I think
Yep.
we've got, okay. So let's move on to the gravel pit solar project. Dave, would you like to do this, or would you like to have Laura?
Laura's going to do this one.
Thank you. Let's go over the presentation that we prepared and sent to you last Friday. And then I will tell you the importance of providing you with updates between Friday and Wednesday, as many things change during that time. So where we are with gravel pit solar is it's a contract that we entered into in June of 2020. We entered into it with a fairly large national renewable energy developer called DE Shaw Renewables. It was going to be a solar facility located in southern New England. CMLP's share of the 50 megawatt contracted to E&E is 3.7%, which represented about 2% of CMLP's expected needs. The price for the generation was $51.95, and the guaranteed COD was 6/30/2023. What's happened is, due to the anti-dumping investigation into solar panels manufactured in Asia, solar module imports have been subject to detention, with the result that the Asian manufacturers are no longer willing to manufacture panels for the US because they were building them, shipping them over here, and then they got stuck. So they're not willing to do that. And DE Shaw informed us, excuse me, that its contract to purchase panels for the gravel pit solar project was canceled. So DE Shaw is willing to deliver the project, but they want a higher price and a later COD. And what are they looking to exact from us as changes to the contract? First, they want tariff price protection. They proposed a 40 cent per megawatt hour increase for every penny per watt DC increase in the panel tariff, up to a maximum of $6 a megawatt hour. They want to delay the COD to December 2024. Those are all things they want. What E&E has negotiated is an increase in the development security, which is an amount of money that a developer provides to the potential buyer in case they fail to deliver the project. It's like a liquidated damages amount. It was previously $25,000 per megawatt AC, and E&E's negotiated that we would increase that to $45,000. So as additional security, now if DE Shaw doesn't develop this project and fails to provide what they said, our security has nearly doubled, that we would take as liquidated damages. Next slide. So the options that CMLP has is we can either stay in the buying group. Our PPA price will be unknown, because remember, it's going to change based on the actual level of the tariff, the import tariff on the panels, but it would be between $51.95 and $57.95. The guaranteed COD would now be December 31st, 2024, which is 18 months later than what we originally contracted for. And as I said, the pre-development COD, the pre-COD development security increases 87.5%. It's now $45,000 per megawatt, or $2.25 million for the full 50 megawatts. Or if we don't want to stay in the buying group and we're unwilling to accept the changes that DE Shaw has proposed, we can collect our share of the pre-development security, which is about $44,000, and walk away. The problem I see, I don't like this at all. Suppliers, especially big sophisticated ones like DE Shaw, are supposed to hedge their supply. Okay, when they executed this deal in 2020, they should have shored up their solar panel at a fixed price, and it should have been guaranteed. And they deal with those risks of tariffs and other international incidents, shipping costs, all those things are things they have to consider as a big international player. And for them to come back to us little guys at the end of the day and say they want us to take some of that risk, I think is unacceptable. However, our only alternative to accepting their changes is to walk away. And right now, CMLP would not be able to enter into another solar contract with anybody else because no one else is willing to offer them right now with this tariff risk. So we would be giving up this renewable resource, which is at a very competitive price. And that portion, and granted it's a small one, but we build our renewables, in these slices because we don't want to take on any huge development risk from any one developer. So it's a small share of our portfolio, but they add up. And so that is sort of the way things stood on Friday. On Monday, the Wall Street Journal reported that the White House decided to pause the new tariff related to the solar panel imports. And there was even a comment in the news article saying they didn't think that the complaint that had been lodged that started this investigation would end up having merit, meaning there may not be a tariff at all. That they won't determine that there was dumping that occurred. So we asked DE Shaw, now that the White House has made this call, how does this affect the gravel pit solar contract? And they wrote back, and I quote, "The ruling today significantly reduces the risk of anti-dumping tariffs from the Department of Commerce. The order addresses the sufficiency of solar module supply specifically, which is the concern that needed to be addressed. Our lenders will require the PPA price increase scalar to remain in the PPA contract, but as a practical matter, the relative risk of a price increase resulting from these tariffs has been reduced significantly." So my PowerPoint changed after we sent it to you because this happened. And I think at this point, you all can decide. The COD has still been delayed 18 months. You all could still decide to walk away, or you can decide to stay in. I think that's the discussion and decision to be had today.
And
Now, this is a 25-year agreement, correct?
Yes.
And my recommendation is to stay in it. Even if the price goes up to 57, it's still, there's not much else out there in this area. I agree with Laura. We don't like what's transpired, but it is still a good contract.
I think you hold
It
your
does-
nose.
It does speak to the volatility of the whole renewables market, and we are one player in it, although albeit small.
So what happened, Laura? Oh, I'm sorry, Alice. I thought you were done.
I was just going to suggest that, I had heard that, I had read that report about the tariffs being lifted. It was, I think for Pam, it was that there was a concern that panels produced in China were being bought in other places and resold at a profit. So it clamped down the market, saying no more imports of Chinese produced solar panels because it was questionable about who was producing them and where they were how they were being sold back.
And though the investigation is not complete, they feel that may not have merit.
Right.
So just to not belabor this conversation, because we are behind on the agenda times. Does anyone, can I do a quick straw poll to see if we need to keep discussing? How many feel we should?
Can I ask a question, Brian?
Yeah,
So
go
when
ahead.
we said, Laura, when you said the scalar still exists, you're speaking to the potential of tariffs on top of that still?
Yeah, should there be tariffs, the new amended contract would allow the power purchase agreement to be adjusted upward by 40 cents a megawatt hour for every penny per watt DC of a solar tariff that was implemented. But it
That's
maxes out. You can't go
at
more than $6
57.95.
higher.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just
And-
want to reiterate that. Okay.
And that applies to the tariffs that are in existence today, or is that applied to any proposed tariffs that may, appear in the next 25 years?
The way it reads, it says a 40 cent per megawatt hour increase for 1 cent per watt DC increase in panel prices up to $6. So to the extent there's any tariff in place today, if there's an increase from current levels, then the trigger in the contract price would apply.
And regardless, it's still a better deal price-wise, even if we hit the maximum on that language.
Yeah, onshore wind, is closer to $70 plus.
Okay.
Significantly more. And, like I said, as of Friday, there were no other solar offers, but now we've had this ruling on Monday. People may begin to feel comfortable to offer them again. I mean, imagine the CODs are going to be 2026, and later at this point.
Okay, so
Sorry.
we don't need to vote on this, but I would like to do a quick check-in with each of you to understand if you're in favor of staying in or dropping, to get your opinion.
I'm in favor.
Okay. Alice
I would support staying in for now.
and Pam?
Yeah, I guess I also have a question about
Sure.
what you said that things got stuck. What was the essential policy concern? Was it about disposal of the panels ultimately? Resale?
No, it was an economic one. There were, Trump instituted tariffs
Right,
on Chinese imports.
Okay, all right.
And so China makes, a lot of the solar panels, or did at the
Already.
time. And so what people started doing is sending the Chinese panels to Vietnam and Thailand and other Southeast Asian countries, and then saying that the panels were being, produced there and sent to the US, circumventing
I see. I got it.
the
Okay.
tariffs that Trump put in
Gotcha.
place.
Gotcha. Okay.
Um,
I'm
Pam,
good.
are you in favor of staying in or moving out?
Based on what I know at the moment, I mean, it seems, and I would defer to Dave on these kinds of things.
Okay, great. Then I think we should stay in. It's, hold our nose and go forward. All right, so I'm going to move us on to the EV commercial charging on the agenda. And I believe Laura is also going to talk to this.
So Brian, how do you want to go through this one? I sent the PowerPoint presentation that we went through in November,
Right.
this past November. I don't know if you want us to rehash that whole thing since it's been a while, or just kind of give an overview.
My recollection, which is not perfect, is that the only residing concern I had was the use of submeters. So if a commercial customer has their normal commercial meter and they're paying their full $12 demand charge, there is a demand fee on the charger. And if it's a sub-meter design, then they're paying an additional demand fee above their normal demand fee. And the point of the program was to avoid the demand fee on the commercial customer, that $12, and to reduce that. So if we've worked out the technical part of that, that's what I'd like to hear about. If there's any other concerns the board members would like to go over, let me know.
Okay.
So Laura, or Dave, if you wish to go, however you wish to proceed. I do want to save some time.
Okay, Laura, do you want to just give like a quick overview, and then we'll talk about Brian's points?
Okay, could you bring up the PowerPoint? Because it would just be helpful to look at a couple of slides. I'm not going to go through
Yeah,
every single one.
give me a second. Okay.
Dave, I have it open if you want me to share.
It should be.
No, he's got it.
Okay.
Okay, as you know, we have
Yeah.
programs in place to help support smart charging of electric vehicles in town for residential customers. You may recall a conversation we had back a long time ago, which said that electric vehicles are a good thing in many ways. They reduce carbon emissions, number one. They increase sales for CMLP, which helps lower the unit costs for everybody using electricity. However, they're not without consequences. And if EVs are charged during times of the day that we already stress the grid, then EVs are not going to be the panacea that everybody thinks, because we'll need to build new power plants and new transmission lines to meet this new peak need. So the important thing with EVs is we definitely want them, but we want people to get used to charging them during times of the day when we won't need to build new infrastructure to meet the charging needs. So we already have programs at CMLP to support this idea of smart charging, not during the peak for residential customers. And we didn't have it for commercial, in part because it seemed easier to say, okay, residential people, you just charge at night. You get home from work, after the evening peak, you set it to charge starting at 11 p.m. or 12, it charges overnight and it's ready for you the next day. Well, commercial customers, if they're going to offer workplace charging, that's not so easy, right? They're just typically not going to be there at night. Can you advance the slide? So the goal of this program we're presenting to you today is to encourage the development of EV charging infrastructure at workplaces, multi-dwelling units, schools, fleets, and retail, and to reduce and align the peak-related costs caused by EV charging. Next slide. So this is a summary of the program. We basically help offset the cost to install charging infrastructure, which is what we do with our residential program. We give people $250 against the cost that they incur either from an electrician or by buying equipment to install level 2 charging. We're going to do something similar with commercial customers, but because the cost of installing that infrastructure is higher, the rebate proposed is higher. Rather than $250, it would be up to $6,000. And when combined with other money that's available from the Massachusetts EV program, a customer would, in theory, be able to fully cover the cost of installing a typical $30,000 dual port charging station. It doesn't mean it would be completely free for the customer. They would still be responsible for some non-covered costs, such as software and warranty subscriptions from the charging manufacturer, maintenance, permitting, signage, painting, bollards, etc. So it's not like someone can sign up for this program and have zero out-of-pocket costs, but we've designed our rebate to make it almost free for covered costs for a customer installing a typical station. Now, in exchange for giving them this money, we want a couple things back from the customer. We want them to be on a time of use rate. And so we are proposing with this program to install a separate meter and put a new tariff in place, which would be a commercial EV charging rate, which is a time of use rate. We would also be entitled to approve the customer's charging policy. One of the tricky things about charging infrastructure with the public and shared chargers that we have today, CMLP controls the pricing. And one of the things we want to encourage is EV charging costs to be competitive. We don't want people to put in chargers and be charging the equivalent of $5 or $10 a gallon, because we're trying to encourage EVs. So when someone else controls the pricing, we lose that influence. And so we're proposing that in exchange for this grant money, we would have to approve the customer's charging policy of what they intend to charge their customers. And then we would also get the charging data, which would help us further refine our tariffs that are more geared towards the actual charging patterns that we see at workplace charging, and not just some theoretical ones we pulled from an academic study. So that's the program. Keep in mind, it's it goes against some of the other things you were trying to do, which is rate simplicity. We're trying to reduce the number of tariffs, not increase them. We don't like separate meters. We don't want to keep putting meters in the field. But this is the only way we could think of to encourage commercial charging, but still have some influence over when the charging occurs. And we believe the benefits of the program are that it furthers the town's sustainability goals. It increases electric sales for the benefit of all CMLP customers. It evens out the peak demand cost risks between CMLP and the customer. And then we would collect the data on workplace and other public charging patterns. So that's my summary. And Dave, if you want to speak to Brian's questions on the wiring and the meter, that would be good.
Yeah, so, there's a couple different options. You can have the customer put in a standalone service for this, and some may do that, some may not. They could also put a sub-meter in, which is something that is a little more challenging and complex on our end. I think one of the things that, is important is, do we want to complicate the rate structure and make a special rate for something like this? In the past, we've done things like that, and we've had quite a bit of unintended consequences. That's why we try to simplify. So what Laura put together here was, an option. And I think some of the discussion that needs to be had around this is if they put a standalone meter in,
Customer charge.
the meter charge or the customer charge. And, we're trying to promote this, but we also have to look at things in a balanced approach in terms of, is it rate discrimination to not charge them the meter charge? And the board needs to think about that when we vote through rates. And we need to, do a comparison to other rates we've done as well. So there's a lot of complexity to be discussed here. But I think Laura summarized it well in that, we want to move forward with promoting EVs in the commercial space, but promoting them in a smart way. And, if someone just plugs in to charge during the peak, we are losing our shirts in terms of the costs, and we'll never recoup that. So just some pieces to think about.
Now, what about load control systems? The ability to turn off that meter that is looking at those charging units. So would we be able to predict an RNS time and be able to switch off that meter for that 2-hour period and so forth as a way to avoid demand fees completely on this rate and to allow the customer to know that the EV charging is not adding to demand fees on their customer rate and to avoid that customer charge?
Yeah, there's load control things out there that we could look at. I think one of the things to get someone to participate in this, they're not necessarily going to want us controlling when their charge is on and off. And I kind of equate it to our public charging stations where, we don't want people to charge during the peak and, you do price signals for that. But if someone needs to charge and they look up on ChargePoint that there's a charger here and it's available, they kind of need to be able to charge. So we want to discourage charging during the peak, but I don't think we can just shut off a commercial customer's charger. I don't think they would go for that, but it is something that can be done.
Well, actually, I don't know that it can be done because the way this program's set up, Brian, is we will not be owning or operating the chargers. These are customer supplied charging units, just like on the residential side. Okay.
Yep.
And so we are not going to be controlling the switches on these. They are customer owned infrastructure.
I would be looking for the meter to do the
That's
on
what I was referring to.
Yeah. So
we could control that way. That's what I was referring to. What Laura's talking about, she's also correct. They're just two different pieces.
Pam, Alice, and what are your thoughts?
Well, I have a question about it.
Sure.
It seems like I understand that we're incentivizing the EVs and EV charging. But in the way the rate structure is, this would really only benefit a company or a corporation that has EVs in their fleet vehicles because their employees, I think in Concord, it's fair to say that it's all 9-to-5 employees who travel and come to a location, that we don't have second or third shift operations throughout town. That would mean that the charging is always during either medium peak or high peak. that they don't have the option of off-peak charging unless it's a fleet vehicle.
Well, this
Might not-
this also
Well-
could apply to the multifamily units.
That's residential, right? The multifamily. So I'm talking about the commercial, where we're mostly
Right.
talking about this being
You
a
are correct
commercial
with commercial,
distribution.
but this would
So-
apply to both commercial and the multifamily units.
But I think the language being used is that this is a commercial installation at a business where we are providing the
Right.
$30,000. Yeah. So there's a disconnect for me about they don't really have an option for off-peak charging, which begins at midnight. Because these are employees who would be driving their EVs to work and charging when they get there during the day. So I don't quite understand how that would work for us to our advantage or to the customer's advantage, not to be able to peak not to be able to charge while they're at work.
Laura, can you answer that?
Yes, so I mean, Alice, you are correct. But the most difficult time period, the RNS and annual capacity peak period sort of targeted typically between 4 and 8 p.m. That's the 33 cent per kilowatt hour time period, right? The mid peak, which is 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. is less than 19 cents. Of course, this is all before the PCA, so bear with me. But the mid peak would be 19 cents and the off peak is 13.3 then overnight. I mean, there's nothing, Alice, that I can do to change the fact that it costs more for electricity during the day than it does at night. And this is one of the disconnects with having electric vehicle charging at workplaces. It's not the best. The best is to put it at residentials when they can charge overnight. So I would say that the program still is beneficial because as long as they avoid that 4 to 8 p.m., which seems to me mostly doable unless maybe you're at a restaurant. You know, and there are some people who do get to work before 8 a.m. They could do 6 to 8. But, you know, it's not the 33 cents, it's 19 cents instead of 13.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I just think it's, again, it's a measure, it points to how we need to do a really good job on communication so people understand when the peak occurs and that not charging from 4 to 8, which realistically it's 4 to 6 for people who are commuting to work, right? Those are probably the only 2 hours of the day. And if they plug in early enough in the morning, they'd have enough charge to get home. But still, when we talk about on peak and off peak, we have mid peak, which is most of the time when these vehicles in commercial locations are going to be charging.
Yeah. Pam, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted this, this must be a very common issue right now. Is there a best practices model from some other progressive city or town that you might gain? I mean, you're not creating this whole cloth, are you?
No. This is a problem that exists. The EV Make Ready program for the investor-owned utilities was focused on workplace charging for many years. It had very large subsidies to make it happen. It's a complicated problem.
My question is,
there is no.
my question maybe goes to Laura and Dave. Have we done comparable? We must have done a lot of studies on what's out there for us to choose from in terms of how to structure this thing optimally. Is that right?
Well, despite the fact that EVs have been around for a number of years, it's still the Wild West in terms of how people are pricing this. And there's still people doing what we consider to be very stupid things like offering free charging. To us, that's not a responsible pricing policy for society or for the customer.
There are no best practices coming out of any
It's all over the place, you know.
Right.
Okay.
And we haven't been able to find anyone who came up with a better idea. I mean, even on the residential side, if you recall, we had this problem that to truly know when people were charging, we needed a separate meter, and we didn't want to do that. It's been a problem for a long time.
Yeah. I just wondered if there was any, scan of opportunities that exist presently. But you answered my question. I'm fine. It's good.
Wendy, do you have any questions?
So I guess, Brian, my only question, this is really a commercial rate discussion, but then you keep referring back to the multi-dwelling units. And I guess I'm just trying to be clear about where the concern is coming from. It's both?
So the program would apply to both. Communities like Concord Green have
Right.
carports where they
Right,
can
I
use
know that.
this. So the concerns I'm hearing for Alice is that mid-peak, that is not a concern for the multi-dwelling units. But the concern is this is a difficult area to address, and this is the best program the light plant has been able to come up with to address workplace charging and
Yep.
some aspects of the gap between a shared charger for a multifamily unit and deeded.
Yep.
Every spot has a charger. Do you have a question? Because I'm going to go into a little.
No, I mean, I guess I'm in support of the rate. I think Alice's point about education is really important. We have to find a balance, and I know this is complex, but I think this was the best we have at the time to offer, and the education is part of it. It's challenging.
And I feel that we need to put this out there so that these customers have the opportunity to take advantage of the EVIP money before the state changes its mind or changes the policies and that incentive goes away. I do have a lot of detail concerns about this program, so I think we should, start it, see how it goes, and be ready to adjust if we have any issues. One question I have is the rate will change. Like you mentioned the PCA. If we implement this rate today, the PCA still applies to this, and it's an additional. How do we have a communication structure with those participating in this program to notify them that they need to update their devices and the rate that they collect?
Well, the rate doesn't exist yet today, Brian, so nobody's on it.
Right, but when it exists and there's changes to our rates that affect these customers, they are the ones that need to make the update to their software. So we need to have some kind of communication tool to notify them before they get hit with a bill and notice it retroactively.
Yeah, we would have to establish that process, but I agree with you, Brian. It is something that would be important for us to do.
All right, and so to kind of move us forward, the question on the agenda is, does the board want to hold a vote to approve this program and put it out there? Do we feel it's ready for going out into the public, and with the understanding that we need to check in on it after we have a few customers and see how it's going and maybe make adjustments?
I think you do need to have a rate hearing if it would be a new rate, so it would have to be.
Okay,
yeah.
So I'm going to take a quick vote of the board, a straw poll, just to say, do we want to have this at our June 22nd meeting as have a rate hearing for this topic as well? Wendy?
Yeah. Yes.
Pam?
Yeah, I feel like I don't know enough about this, but I think we should probably, yeah.
Okay, Alice?
I have a question for Laura. Do you think that we are ready to have a rate hearing on this program, Laura, in 2 weeks?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
But I do
that's
have
the confidence I needed.
I think Dave touched on the problem of fairness to the residential versus the commercial. Is everybody okay with that end of it?
Well, that would be discussed in the rate hearing, I believe, the details of that. So you could get really into that, and I think you'll need to.
But we would be taking a position on the fundamental fairness, right? We would have said it's okay with us, I guess. Is that right? Or
Well, it depends if, what you decide to do with the customer charge. That's the piece you're referring to. Is it included or not? And we'll have a proposal, and you guys will end up talking about it and deciding how you want to move forward with it.
okay.
Excellent. All right. So before we move on to the next agenda item, we are about 20 minutes behind schedule. So I would like to get the board's opinion on taking the middle school solar project and bumping that to the June 22nd meeting, so that we have time to have a full discussion about the in-town solar and Article 38.
I would propose that we go to the middle school project. And if something has to be bumped, we bump Article 38. I think there's a much longer conversation about Article 38 and our approach to how to implement it. And I
Okay.
think it's an understanding of where we are in the solar update, the middle school project, to keep the project going forward.
And Wendy, your opinion?
Um, I don't have strong feelings either way,
Okay.
but I think the middle school's been on a question for the board for a while, so it's worth it having that discussion.
And Pam, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So then what we'll do is we will bump the discussion of Article 38 to our June 22nd meeting, and we will move on the agenda to our update on the middle school. Dave, would you like to cover the middle school or?
Yep. I'll do it in, I think Amanda's still on. She can chime in as well because we've been working on this together.
Great.
So. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay. So fortunately, we have some information to share finally. I know you guys have been eager to see. I sent out some stuff that we got, and this slide deck is kind of a summary of that. The schedule is kind of broken out into 4 phases. You get the schematic design phase, design development phase, construction documents, and then the RFP development, bidding, and evaluation. You can see on the left-hand side, it's broken out starting in May of 22. We got our contracts in place, the agreement with Solar Design Associates, which was good. We did do some modifications to their original proposal. In June, that's kind of the start of phase 2, where they're going to incorporate comments and update the schematic design and the design development, and get input from SMMA. July, we're forecasted for the design development to be completed and submitted to both the light plant and SMMA. September, you can see 60% contract documents. October, you're looking for a final submission, again, to the CMLP and SMMA for review. November, 90% draft submissions and estimates. December, going kind of through the final revisions of that. And then January, final submission. In February with 100% construction documents incorporated in the bidding package. This slide is kind of the overall slide for the project in general. I know it might be a little bit tough to see, but it starts from the beginning in 2020, outlines each section. And as you can see, the gray section is the section that we're talking about. And that is scheduled to be complete prior to award of the school's bid. So there's a little overlap there, about 6 months. And then, as you can see, it goes through each step of the forecast for the project. And, so it aligns very well with that. This is the latest design from Solar Design Associates. They had to make some adjustments, move some stuff around, but overall, they had to take a couple small sections off the roof for the HVAC, and they added it to the canopy. So overall, looks to be a good design. There are some areas that have shading, so they really want to put those in that area. And then this kind of gives you the numbers, right? What's proposed will exceed the demand energy for the school, which has been discussed at length. Will provide enough, and what's being proposed is more than what's going to be there. As I mentioned, they did lose a little bit of on the roof because of the HVAC, but it's not that significant. And for the proposed array, SDA came back with an estimate of $5 million for the project. And that's not including the battery. That's just the solar itself. And so, you know, as we go through this and as you guys ask questions, I think, you know, the next topic for the board is to discuss the financial piece of it as we work through the process with SDA. And Amanda, I don't know if you want to add anything?
No, I don't think so. I think one piece is that maybe wasn't explicit on the design schedule was the financing piece. So we tried to put that in on that first slide, that there is a financial analysis on the ownership models and incentives during phase 2. And then we would need to think about implementing that in phase 3, which could mean also taking into account town meeting schedule.
Right.
And so making sure that we're thinking about that far enough in advance that we're getting all of those documents in for the correct town meeting.
So Dave, can you bring that schedule back up? The PowerPoint that has schedule to it, or even the decisions. So there's decisions that the board has to weigh in on in terms of the financing. Where is that in this? So where is that in our, when would you anticipate the board? Like, what are the milestones that we're weighing in on? This sort of a,
Well,
this overall.
I think in terms of the financial piece, I think that needs to be a topic we start talking about going forward, because it's going to be quite a bit of analysis. And, you know, Brian mentioned it before meetings ago about, you know, the different options, whether it's ownership or doing a third-party PPA. And I think those things are things that the board needs to
Absolutely.
discuss. And, you know, if we are going to do a borrowing and own it and operate it at the light plant, you know, how does that impact rates and you know,
Right.
that sort of thing. So those are the pieces that I think are going to be important on the board side. In terms of the drawings and the contract and the RFP, you know, we can keep the board informed on where we are with that. But what's set up right now is aligned well with the project itself.
So where's that decision making that you think the board should weigh in on? Where is that in this schedule? Where does that need to happen?
So this is SDA schedule. So
Right. But
in terms of you guys discussing the financial piece, I would think we'd want to be discussing that now with you know, a decision made by November in the event that we wanted to go to town meeting in April or May, when the next annual town meeting is. Because you'd want to be able to get on the warrant if that is what direction the board wants to go.
So from an analysis perspective, so is that your team doing that, or we haven't leveraging the consultant at all to do some of that analysis?
It'll be a little bit of both. We'll get a little
Okay.
bit more details on what their estimates are, and then we'll take that and throw it into our model so that you can see, you know, cost per kilowatt hour. If we do a borrowing, what the interest rate's going to be and how much interest you pay over time. And then you can get a value to what the array is actually costing.
And then the
who's doing
batteries.
that for us? Who's doing the financial modeling for us?
We'll do that internally.
Oh, I thought that was part of what you were contracting with SDA for,
Yeah, they're
that
gonna
they
do-
would provide the design and cost analysis for each of the options that they're proposing.
Yeah, they're going to provide some of that, but there's more detail that we'll do internally for the board in terms of, you know, if we have a bond for this, how much is this going to cost? Like, there's going to be more financial analysis needed than SDA is going to provide. And it's no different than any other project we do. We do all that internally.
So
Dave,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so where does battery fit into this? I mean, battery's a huge expense on top of the 5 million for solar. So that's definitely part of this design, correct?
Yeah,
That'll be
battery
part of it.
The battery is factored in, and
Okay.
you know how we go about that. We haven't decided yet, but the project will have a location for a battery. It'll be battery ready, and you know, we can continue to look at that. I think in terms of the project and the construction, the most important piece is to get the solar stuff established, because it's going to go on the building and in the parking lots. We're going to have a location, you know, set up for the battery. You know, the slab will be poured, And, again, we're gonna have to look at how we approach that, whether it's a PPA or an ownership thing, or we get grant funding. So my focus right out of the gate was the solar. That was the more important piece, to stay on track with the project itself.
And part of that is because this is on the side of town that we don't have the same kind of risk for solar saturation. We can afford that.
Correct. We're the
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so I
Yeah,
mean, the board
but-
has to be clear, this is battery ready. Your intention at this point is not to put the battery in place in line with this implementation.
Well, I
Yeah,
haven't concluded that yet, Wendy.
Okay,
We would like to have the battery there as well.
okay.
We think it's
So
important.
one of the issues is the substation. I mean, even if we have 3 feeder lines that aren't solar saturated, if we saturate those lines, even one more of those, we end up with a substation oversaturated, because we're already going down to what 5 megawatts as a minimum during those spring and fall.
So on this particular transformer, yeah, we get down to around 5 megawatts. The other one, we get down to around 1.7 megawatts. The 1.7 megawatts is the one that is fully saturated. So we have a little wiggle room on this transformer, but we're pushing closer to that saturation without a battery here. And that's why I'm not saying we
Yeah.
don't want to do a battery. I'm just saying
Okay.
the solar piece was more important to get in line with the construction of the project.
And
But if we're gonna go to town meeting, then I think we should consider
Yeah.
potential funding there. So we're not, okay, it's not off the table. That's what I'm
All
hearing.
right.
Yep.
So I have a question. So the original estimates for the cost of solar at this property, if I remember correctly, was around the 4 million mark, and now it has risen to 5 million as the estimate. Is that due to that tariff threat that we talked about in an earlier topic, or is that general market conditions?
So the 4 million was an estimate that I did for that hearing. And those numbers were based on the cost per watt of solar at the time. This estimate is from SDA and it's based on current market.
Can we take a look at that, that recommendation of 5 million so that we understand where the costs are coming from?
Yeah, we
Is that
get,
something you can share with the board?
yeah,
And the total capacity, am I reading this right, is 4 megawatts?
No,
1.4,
It's still 1 point, okay.
isn't it? 1.4? Is that what that, I
I
think
mean,
on the page,
that's what
on
I-
what you, oh, that says 1.5.
yeah, it's almost
I've just-
1.6.
Okay,
So
So
I
I have-
gather, Dave, the whole question of what the footprint will be and how much solar we're going to generate has been
Four.
decided, and it's going to be whatever it takes to service
Oh,
the school and not much more. Is that right?
no,
You know, it's going to exceed
No.
what the school needs.
right,
it's going to maximize that canopy and roof area.
right.
So.
Which was the
can I-
strategy, right? Maximize solar.
Alice?
I have a couple of questions. First, when I looked at the memo that you provided for our meeting today, I just didn't understand how these timelines can be so constrained that it looks like SDA wasn't brought on to start this work until May 31st. So that's Memorial Day.
Oh.
2 days later, they've submitted the first deliverable for review to SMMA, and I assume it's the same drawing. So that was a preliminary drawing that they just took off a couple of panels from the roof. Is that what they did to be
No,
able to
they did
make a 2-day?
No, so to be clear, SDA's been working on this the whole time.
Right,
We
right.
got the contract established at the end of May and got a PO, but they continue to work on it knowing that we were gonna be issuing them a new contract. So they never stopped. And, you might recall in the beginning, we had a feasibility design. That was the piece we did before and showed you a design kind of similar to what's there now. They have since finalized that design to align with what's available at the site. So if you compare the two, they're a little different.
Okay, so that's how they had a 2-day turnaround from the day they were issued a contract to the time they had a deliverable.
Yeah, it was,
Right.
I mean, it's not fair to say it was a 2-day, but by contract, yes.
I'm looking at their schedule that you provided to us, and then by tomorrow, they're going to have changes to that design based on the input they get from CMLP and SMMA.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty aggressive schedule to maintain. So I just want to make sure I was reading that right. So here's my question. It's a procedural one. 2 months ago, when we were discussing how to keep the board informed about the solar project, I said that I would try to be the liaison to our board by going to school committee meetings or wherever else it was being discussed. And for the last 2 months, I've been trying to figure out where these discussions were taking place. They're not happening at the building committee level. And so I'm wondering if there's a different place that I should be sitting on to be able to have ongoing information about the progress of this project, if I'm supposed to report back to the board. And the board said that I should do this. And I'm just trying to figure out, it's taken me like 6 weeks to figure out. There's nobody else that's really talking about it, but yet we now see a schedule and a slightly revised design. What should I do? What's my?
That's a great question. And I just want to emphasize, we've been at it for a long time, and we put Alice in a position, thanks to her generosity, to help track this. And
I don't know where to go. I'm trying.
we're still on the outside of all of this, and I have a
Let's
feeling.
let Dave answer.
Well, I'm just saying, Brian, that we have had a lot of discussion about
I
this,
understand.
and we keep having it, and it's worth reiterating.
Well, I guess for me, it depends, how much you want to get involved in operations. And if you want to get involved in operations, then, I can include you in the meetings that we have with SDA and we can talk about it. But it's an internal thing right now that's not in a committee or anything. It's what the staff normally does. So it's really a level of what you'd like to do, Alice. If you want to be involved in those meetings, I'm happy to have you.
I didn't hear it. I was tasked with going to the meetings as a way to keep the board informed about the project. And I'm finding that the meetings I would have gone to they're not discussing this detail about where we are on the solar design. If my job is to report back to this board, then I need to know where to listen in. And I'm hearing that, so maybe what I'm hearing is that because these are internal discussions of operations, that we do need to have a monthly update from Amanda or you or somebody to tell us the progress that's being made. I mean, to hear that now the costs we saw a PowerPoint that at a cost projection of $4 million for this project. Today, we see something that says 5 million, but we have no data behind it to understand, what the 5 million is, and it doesn't include a battery. So I just want to understand the scope of things that the board is going to need to work on and to have enough background information that we're not all of a sudden having to vote on something that we've had no involvement and understanding until we got to the point of a vote.
Yeah, and that's not the intent here at all. When we go through the financial piece, it's going to be very detailed. You're going to need it to be detailed, and you're going to have the stuff you're talking about. So, we can set up a meeting, Alice, and kind of figure out what the best approach is if you'd like.
I just want to be useful to the board. And this is an assignment I took on, and I just have not been, I've been stymied by figuring out how to get information.
Yeah, so I think we should set up a meeting and kind of get the expectations established and go from there.
And then Dave, just in terms of the coordination with the school building project, I'm assuming there's periodic coordination between what the design associates are doing with them, and it's public disclosure in that meeting as well. Is that a fair statement?
If they go to the school committee meeting, yes. If they're having a meeting with SMMA, and they have those wouldn't be in the public.
Okay.
There have been no discussions at the school committee, the
Or the
Sustainability Design Committee on the solar project. So that's where I tried to go, and it's not been on the agenda for discussion. My understanding is that that's because it's a CMLP project. And so it falls back to us to understand and have our own processes in place for understanding where we're going on the design and build out and cost of this whole project. It's happening outside of the school committee because they're building a school. The CMLP is building or will contract to build the solar system.
Yeah, no, I guess I got that. I just would have expected, to your point about sustainability, there's some cross coordination and communication happening.
I
Yeah,
just
so we're-
generally, is this board being too deferential? Forgive me, Dave, but I just wonder if we're going to be running into a situation where, I mean, the 4 million, 5 million, the battery,
Oh, that's-
the strange schedule. I do not want to be in a situation where I'm going to be abstaining from everything because I wasn't able to digest complicated stuff. And I'm sorry, but I wondered, Brian, are we being too deferential as a
I
board?
don't think so. I think it is important that
neither.
we do check in on this project, and we do. I think it's a great idea to have Alice be involved in those operational discussions. There is a lot of anxiety around this project, and Alice being involved in the operation side can share more information and maybe alleviate some of that anxiety. I'm looking at the schedule, and a lot of these times are quite far out. We're not even at construction documents, so forth. We now know that there is a direct contract so that SMMA can talk directly with SDA about the building's design, so it incorporates solar, incorporates storage. So things are happening. They are happening slowly because this is a very large project. It works over a very long time scale. So I think this board is the one responsible for going through the finances, doing the solar and storage part of this building. But the building design is really where we're at right now. So I think putting Alice in contact in those operation discussions and having her know on the ground what's going on and being able to report to us will be helpful. I think the estimates are changing because they're estimates and because this project won't actually be constructed until 2024. So things change. I know that the tax incentive is phasing out, and Biden has said that he wants to bring another solar tax credit so that we continue our aggressive deployment of solar. What that looks like and how it impacts finances, I don't have that crystal ball today, so we can't answer that. So I hope we can alleviate anxiety in the short term, and that when we get to financial decision points, that we have been informed of those final numbers, and that we really feel confident in where we are in 2023 or 2024 when we're starting to prepare to go out for bid.
So Brian, I guess the only question I would have is that what I heard Dave say is that we need decisions on the finances by November. So we just need to work backwards and make sure that we're planning for those decisions and educating the board on what these decisions are and what the implications are, and so that we're ready to have made those decisions by November. Because then as we think about the town warrant and things like that we're prepared, because we have the budget going on at that same time too. So just have a lot of stuff going on at that time.
Yep, a lot of stuff.
But I appreciate getting these detailed designs. And Dave, if we can get a copy of that presentation from today, that'd be helpful.
And Alice, do you have a final comment?
Well, I was just going to suggest that Dave may be able to have all this in his head at any given time, but there's so much that goes into the decision about the financials on constructing this size solar that we need to consider, which includes the stability of the grid and the whole saturation issue and whether our transformers. So all of those are costs that we need to consider as we decide what we're going to build at the school. And I just want to make sure that I understand them and that this board understands the complexity of the cost model. And I think Wendy's right. In order for us to have a vote in November, we need information long before November.
Right. And
it's very complicated.
And this middle school project, those are really good questions. Those are really what we need to tackle. Article 38 is also going to tackle those similar questions, because we can't add a whole bunch of solar in town today with what we have. We have to create systems for managing it. We have to understand costs. There's a lot of work to be done in this area. So that's exciting to me because I think we can do that. Are we able to conclude this agenda topic for today? And Alice, you'll connect with Dave?
Can I just make one more observation for Dave, which is that the executive function that he performs includes digesting and creating, you know, understandable information that will guide us in the big decisions we have to make, in addition to the key data that we need to have. And I frankly wonder whether we're getting, I think, just a little more attention to, you know, you just displayed a lot of data, but at an executive level, for the benefit of a board like this, I think there needs to be a little more thought given to what are the big issues here? What are the big time frames that we need to really be worried about? And what is the key information we need as a board? And we're not experts at this stuff. So I just encourage you in the going forward, Dave, to perform that sort of function of digesting, boiling down, telling us what here's a big issue and here's the time frame and here's the data you need so that we can responsibly engage. Because you know, this sort of presentation is fine. It's just that it's, you know, we're all experiencing it as a little bit daunting, I think.
It's still early in the process, so.
I don't know that that's true. I'm not convinced. I mean,
I think it is.
It's very early in the process.
It is.
well, we
Yeah.
have some decisions that need to be made and we have to understand things. And Wendy and Alice have both said that there are things that need to be decided and teed up early. I don't know.
I think now's the time. So I think today's point. So we have a schedule. Now we need to be careful and make sure that we're planning ahead and putting those discussions in our agendas going forward. So I think we're at the right place at this point.
I am going to move us on to liaison and public comments. I see Carlin Reed has her hand up.
Hi, Carlin Reed, 83 Wits End. Two questions. First, going back to the June 22nd rate hearing, am I correct that it's going to cover just the power cost adjustment rate increase? That's the first question. Second question is, when will you get your 5th board member? Thanks.
So I can give you a quick answer to both. We don't have an agreed upon agenda for June. We just today decided to do that meeting. But in my notes, I see us talking about the power cost adjustment, talking about the rate for the EV commercial. And we bumped the talk about Article 38 to that date as well. So those are three of the topics I see us talking about. The additional board member, Carrie, is working on that. And maybe the June 22nd, we'll have our new board member. If not, definitely by the following meeting, which was the plan before this morning. Tanya?
Good morning. Tanya Gala, 62 Prescott Road. I just wanted to, well, thank you for a great meeting. And I wanted to emphasize or bring to your attention the tree preservation aspect of Article 38 when you do discuss it. And I note in your agenda that there was a brief discussion about the article on May 11th. Is there a way to get a recording or draft minutes of that discussion? I would be grateful also.
Sure, I can try to follow up on that. That was the, what date was that again?
May 11th.
May 11th. All right. I will try to forward that to you.
Thanks.
David, Alan?
Good morning. If I could reflect from now a couple of decades, going on a couple of decades being present in these undertakings, my own sense is that our director, Dave Wood, does a remarkably fine job in bringing to the board both the detail and the larger questions that need to be dealt by the board. I also want to notice that
Mehul, I was involved in another meeting and I'd like to speak.
Do you mind, Gordon, if we just wait for David to finish, and then I'll call on you next?
I also want to notice that board members accepting their responsibilities to serve on the Mike Plant Board, one of the most important, to be simple about it, in Concord, except in my view, an obligation to bring themselves up to speed on the detail, which can involve pretty significant effort. If I could go on beyond that, the topic of solar saturation is figured today. If I could rise up, as it were, to maybe the 30,000 foot level on this and broach an item where I feel less than informed, but when this has come up in the past, Dave, as I understand it, you have pointed out that yes, there is the possibility that we could sell power back to the grid. It's not been implemented, not only issues, engineering, this and that and the other, but we could get beyond solar saturation if that were true. Is that correct? And if there's anything to that, is this an idea in its infancy and will never be seen or might happen one day? Can you give us a little guidance on that? We
Yeah,
appreciate it.
so that is something that can happen. Actually, Energy New England's going to give a presentation at a board meeting coming up on that exact topic. So we've looked into it and we understand it. And there's a lot of pieces to it that I think the board and the public will want to hear, because it is possible. There's a lot of steps, but that is coming.
That is very good news. Thanks so much.
I have that as one of those drafted agenda topics for a future meeting. We've got quite a few of those though. But yes, that's a great question, Dave. Thank you. Gordon.
Sorry for interrupting you, Mr. Allen. I didn't realize my microphone was on. I just wanted to, sorry also for not being able to speak. I was using a different laptop and I had to exit Zoom and come back in. I just wanted to ask, with regard to the minutes, I got a last minute request from Pam for one of the minutes that there was a line that she, that indicated that she'd made a commitment to do some work that she didn't recall having made. So Pam, do you remember which minute?
Well, that's why I asked about April 27th hasn't been discussed yet.
Okay, so we don't have
that
to worry
gets
about that.
broad. I wanted to hold it because it's a broader issue about what apparently Wendy and I agreed to with respect to getting in touch with Carrie. And I think
Okay.
we just want to clarify. And I don't have any objections per se. I don't understand what we finally agreed to. It's not what I remembered.
Okay, and then just I'll hand over. You can take care. You have the package. I sent it out yesterday of the approved, the candidates for approval. I'll let everybody has what was reviewed today and approved today. So I'm basically handing it off to you now.
Okay.
Great. Thank you again, Gordon, for all your work. And
Thank you,
we'll
Gordon.
pick it up from here.
Okay, thank you.
And now just to finish that off, I've put in an email request to Dave Wood to talk to him about a clear understanding of what the minute operation is going to look like.
Yeah, we'll get that meeting set up.
Great. And Pamela Dritt. And then I'm going to call on Dean and we'll conclude the public comments because I know Dave has a meeting he has to get to.
13 Concord Green, Pamela. I agree that I'd really like to see us be able to sell our excess power back to the grid so that we don't have solar saturation problems, because don't we have to, our ultimate goal is for climate change is to electrify everything and green the grid at the same time. And so that means we have to add all the solar we can, not cutting down trees to do it over roofs and things. And we also need the batteries to go with it. So with and we need all electric transportation. And that means CMLP is going to need to supply massive more amounts of electricity ultimately. And we got to make the infrastructure investments to do that, don't we? And we also need to aim at a distributed grid that does power generation and distribution like the internet does information distribution.
I agree with you, Pamela. Those are the goals and aspirations, but we also have to make sure that this clean energy is the most affordable option to customers, and managing, going at the speed of money.
Yes, and managing the money. I agree. That's a good point. And that's why when you're talking about, is it fair to this kind of customer or that kind of customer, is the wrong way to look at it. You need to look at the entire financial system of rates.
We are going to look at it from all angles. I do need to keep us moving. Do you have any pertinent topics?
Yeah, utility scale power suppliers aren't building solar, wind, and battery utility things fast enough, because the levelized cost of electricity figures are inaccurate. They're not using the actual data. They're using estimates that lower their cost for fossil fuel plants.
Yes.
And so
I'm going to, if you don't mind, Pamela, I'm going to move us on to Dean, because we really are behind.
one more thing. Are we considering using the electric school bus fleet as battery?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. And I can give you more of an update in the months to come on that project.
I want to ask you to consider stopping spending money on RECs and use it to build our infrastructure and our other incentives for local actual energy generation, because I think it will make a more impact on actual greening of the energy supply.
Okay. Dean, would you like to go?
Sure, thank you. Dean Banfield, 73 Walden Terrace. I want to thank the board for doing a presentation that was so comprehensive on the middle school building project. That the display of where panels will go and the detail about how many kilowatt hours will be generated is very instructive. A couple of policy items that probably need to find a home, and that is the utilization of the site seems to be maximized in the drawings to include an area where students would basically walk under a sidewalk. It's not obvious to me that the school committee or the school building committee would agree that that's something that they want on the site. I just think that you need to have a policy model that allows you to have a conversation with the school building committee about where you can put stuff. In parking lots, on the roof, fine, no problem. But I think that that particular element needs to be discussed in a policy manner. The other thing I have a question about is how sure are we at this point regarding the infrastructure on the roof of the building and how much of an impact that's going to have on the way SDA has aligned the panels. Is that already been defined, so you know that those panels are not going to get shaded by equipment and that the equipment is going to be where you think it is? That's a question that I have. That's a basic question.
Well, that's all been considered and factored into what was shown today.
Yeah, you can see it in the design. You can see where the mechanical equipment, and behind it to the north, you can see less panels, and that is due to the shading effect of the height of those mechanicals. And that's where that SDA, SMMA direct conversation is so useful.
The one piece of that is ongoing is that they have to put some kind of fencing around the equipment that's going to be to just mitigate the noise that the equipment makes. So that may have, I don't know if that's been included in the design.
That has been discussed as well.
It has. Okay, thanks. That's all. So I guess that's that one little piece is the walkway, and whether or not you have an agreement with the school building committee that they are on board with that, especially if you're over utilizing the site for what they need to be a net zero school. So that's all. That's the only thing. Thanks.
Okay, and Dean, please join us on June 22nd.
Well, I was looking forward to it today, but you got bumped, so
Yeah.
it's all good. Don't worry about it.
All right,
it's okay.
Thank you. with that, I'd like to ask if any members would like to move that we adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second,
those in favor of adjourning, Wendy,
Aye.
Pam,
Yep.
Alice,
yes.
and I agree as well. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thanks.